together 3-2 is going to be using exactly the same accounts and the same journal that we did for 3-1. When we look here, what's important to know is every business is always going to have a set number of accounts that you're going to be used, and that's going to be called your chart of accounts. Okay? So you can't just one time decide to add postage expense and nobody else is going to know about it. A business is always going to set up all the accounts that they're going to use. And so we have cash through utilities expense as accounts that we're going to be using. And you'll notice that we have norm dermer capital and norm dermer drawing. We are a sole proprietorship organized as a service business. Okay? So we have these transactions. We have April 5th, 7th, and 9th. Is there a possibility that we may have multiple transactions that are the 5th? Yes. A business may write out multiple checks on the 5th. So we'll go through here, and it says journalize the transaction continuing on the next blank line of the journal. Source documents abbreviated as follows: C check, M memorandum. M memorandum is another type of source document that you're using, which is basically an agreement between the two people on a statement above what is happening. So it's not going to fit as a sales invoice. It won't fit as a receipt or a cash register tape. So you'll have an M there. So the first transaction is bought supplies on account from Palm Supply, $500, M1. First thing that happens is going to be that we're going to go through and we have to figure out which two accounts are being affected. Okay, so we have supplies and we have accounts payable Palm Supply. Now, when we use a journal, Taylor, when we use a journal, we have general columns and we have special columns. Our two special columns are sales and cash. Would you agree? Now, this transaction right here, is it using any special columns? No. So therefore, this transaction is going to take up two lines in our journal. Is it important which account goes first? Yes, we have to put our debit first. Okay, so we have sales and accounts payable, supplies and accounts payable Palm Supply. So let's take accounts payable Palm Supply. What is the classification? Liability, thank you. Do we have more liability or less liability because of this transaction? More. So are we debiting or crediting them? Crediting, because they are on the right-hand side of the accounting equation. So we know that accounts payable Palm Supply is going to be credited. So what has to happen to supplies? Debited. So this is why every day I'm having you do a T account quiz for you to pass, because anytime you hear an account title, you need to know the classification, and then you need to be able to tell me the increase or decrease side, because that's going to help you to determine where it goes on here. And if you struggle with passing the T account quiz, it's going to make this much harder. Okay? So when we look at our journal, we always have to work left to right. So I'm going to put in the date of the 5th. And we just said that we're going to be debiting supplies. Now, please note when you type in supplies, there is supplies expense, supplies office, and supplies store. The only accounts that we can use are the ones that are listed here. And the only account that is listed for us is supplies. Do not use supplies expense. They put that in there to trick you. Source document is M1. Please note that this transaction takes two lines, but you only need to put the date once. This will get some of you incorrect on your tests. Because this transaction takes up two lines, you put the date on the first line, and you only have to put the doc number on the first line as well. Okay? And then we're going to general debit for $500. And then we are going to credit accounts payable Palm Supply. Make sure you choose payable, not receivable. And we are not affecting anything in the sales, cash debit, or cash credit column. Remember, in our journal, we don't have to affect every column. We just affect the columns that are being affected by this transaction. So the next transaction is April 7th. Paid cash for insurance, $300. Cody, what two accounts are being affected? Do we have any special columns that are being affected? I'm sorry, I just didn't hear your response. We don't have any special columns that are being affected? Okay, what is a special column, Cody? That's what I was talking about at the beginning of the hour. Devin, do you know what a special column is? Yes, cash and sales. Special columns are the columns that start with an account title. So do we have a special column then, Cody? Yes, and which one would it be? Cash. So because we have a special column that's being affected by this transaction of cash, we know that we don't have to write the account title cash in our account title column. We're going to write the other one in which Cody told us, which is going to be prepaid insurance. So I'm going to put the date of the 7th, and then I'm going to put in prepaid insurance. And then my source document is going to be C2. And the other thing that we know is because our source document is a check, cash has to be what? Credit. So if cash is being credited for $300, then we know we must be affecting general debit $300. And the 9th, paid cash on account to Palm Supply. Dylan, what two accounts are being affected? Correct. Do we have a special column that's being affected? Thank you. So what has to go in the account title? Correct. So I'm going to put the date in the 9th. Accounts payable, Palm Supply, source document C3. And we know cash is being credited, so accounts payable, Palm Supply has to be debited. Now, the other thing that comes into play, don't exit off of this assignment yet, is please note, I have 3 check numbers on here. Do you see where I have C1 on line 2, and then on line 5 I have C2 and C3? What would happen if all of a sudden I wrote a check and it was C7? We missed some transactions, would you agree? So when we go through to journalize, what's going to happen is when you look at your source documents, if your previous M was 1, your next M should be 2. You shouldn't miss numbers in between. The only one that's not going to hold true for is going to be your T, because your T stands for your calculator tape, which deals with your cash register, and a calculator tape is always going to be T and the date. So if I were to get a calculator tape for today, it would be T29. If I did it on Wednesday, it would be T1, because that's the date that we're recording the transaction. All other source documents are going to be pre-numbered, and they should show up in consecutive order. So it helps us to see if we missed something. A business is always going to go through and have a certain date that they record transactions and payments on, so that way they'll be able to see if they missed something for our T dates. Go ahead and try on your own.